Welcome to Tuesday. No, wait, it's Wednesday.
We messed it up on you guys.
Yeah,
Oopsies.
we're here. What are we talking about today, guys?
Before we do that, I want to let everybody know who is watching to make sure you guys join in the chat. And if you have any questions, anything while we're doing this, we do this live so that you can participate. So please participate. Pop whatever you have to say, think, questions, comments, all of that in the your chat in the comments, and we will respond to you in real time. And that
Not
is
fake time?
Nope, not fake time. I wish that existed because then, like, we could have extra time.
Yeah, but it'd be fake.
There'd be more time in our lives.
What are we talking about today?
Fake time.
No, no, we're not. We are talking about body language and nonverbal communication.
More than that, yeah. It's more than body language. We're talking about nonverbal communication, and I think that this extends far beyond just body language. Hi, Paul. Hello. Good to see you.
And David as well.
Hi, David. Hello. Good to see you.
So
body language. We've been having a lot of body language already as we've been displaying it, as we've been chit-chatting, as we've been goofing around, as we have been sharing what we're talking about, as we're asking you to participate. What have you noticed in body language? We're having fun. Well, what else? Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
We're having fun.
Anthony looks distracted. So does Kyle. A little bit. Jen looks pensive. As far as body language goes, we of course are just the neck up. Kyle and Jerome are just the head up. When within that space, we've talked about body language. What other ways can we communicate non-verbally?
All kinds of subtle ways. I'm not
sure.
Facial
expressions.
You know, the way we hold our hands, the way we posture, the way we hold our shoulders.
How you say a word.
Intonation, yes.
Intonation, paralinguistics.
How you dress.
Yeah, I could wear a t-shirt with an explicit phrase right across the front.
Yeah, or you could wear, how you dress depending on where you're at and what you're kind of, that sort of thing could express some stuff.
How about
our backgrounds?
Yeah.
Didn't the first lady that wore a jacket with something written on the back? Yeah.
How close you are to someone?
What was that?
How close you are to someone? Like if I got really close to someone's face.
Touch, right?
Versus very far. Touch.
Or even just showing you're interested by, tell me more. Fixing your headphones, that's one.
The lean in, right?
Lots of different ways to communicate non-verbally. One of the things in the article we read that was interesting was also can do a lot, like a head nods, head shakes, all of these things. Why is this important for coaches?
Well, that in between where you're supposed to be silenced, ICF doesn't like that. They don't want you to do that.
The article said to do it.
They don't like it. They grade you on it, and if you do it too much, I just took a, it's been a little bit now, a PCC marker, and we have to pay attention to all those ums and those fillers, and they don't like them. It doesn't go towards.
Well, I think that the difference being deliberately placed or a deliberately placed gesture or nod, or can be very different than a, like, ye, you know what I mean? Which is those sort of things that we do to fill in the space when we're thinking a lot of times, right?
I just did it. Mm-hmm.
And you're standing or nodding your head. I was just going to point it out. Lisa's doing some verbal communication right there. She's going, and she's nodding her head right there. What does this, so Lisa, you mentioned one way that that filling in those space with those also it can maybe break a client's stride, I would think, if you are mid and you interrupt them with a or a look, or what, they're talking and you go it's a lot of what we're doing as a coach and how we present ourselves and connect is very important. One of the things I always say before we come on is that everybody needs to make sure they don't have RBF when we're on this, which is resting.
Oh, yes. I'm like, what is that?
B face. So say resting okay. Because we want everybody to look interested while we're on this. Because if you look bored, then everybody's gonna just assume we're boring. So what is that as a coach? How can nonverbal help us? Let's start with that.
I think it helps. Oh, go ahead, Anthony.
I was about to say nonverbal. From what I've looked up, the statistics on it, about 55% of all communication is nonverbal, 38% is vocalized, and then 7% is just the content of the words that are being spoken. So it's not so much as in how can it help you, it's just most of your communication is already nonverbal. The majority of it does not have anything to do with what you're actually saying. So how can it help you is just being aware of that fact, for one, that most of what you're communicating is, not the words being spoken.
So amazing point you just made, right? If you said 53% of communication is nonverbal, well, and 35 is what was the 35 was
38% is vocal, so that includes the words, but how you say the words,
but not what the actual words are.
Yeah, the 7% is the actual meaning of the words you're saying. Like if I were to
suddenly perfect questions and advice and all the things a coach might be saying is a lot less important. Saying out loud, I should say, in a realm of communication, which I think is a kind of a cool thing to think about. How else can it help coaches?
I think it's strong in the space of helping build rapport, to go ahead and show that you're paying attention, you're there for them at that moment. To verbally or non-verbally express that helps develop your relationship with your client.
So maybe we should break down the aspects of nonverbal communication and then try to deep dive into them. The first one I'm looking at in Very Well Mind right now is facial expressions. So expressing the emotions that you're feeling at the moment as a coach. I tend to have a pretty neutral face when I coach.
Yeah. So that's a hard thing for us to do as coaches. One of the things we talk about as coaches, and we've done a thing on this, is we can't give praise as a coach. We're not supposed to praise our clients. Well, when we're doing, what are we doing?
You're nodding your head.
We're agreeing. We're praising. We are giving them validation for, by nodding. So a nod can be sort of a little dangerous, a little precarious. Something.
Well, a nod is even more towards like a gesture rather than just a facial expression. Like I'm thinking of like a smile or like grimace or you're afraid.
So would you say that sometimes it looks like you're listening and you're like paying attention? Because if I stare at you the whole time and you just gave me like a plethora of information, it might even come across like I didn't get any of that. But at least when you're nodding, you're like, Okay, I mean, I understand. I'm following you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if a client, let's say, I'm gonna, let's see, let's come up with something here. Guys, guys, I think I'm gonna quit my job.
Okay. When?
What?
Yeah, no, I'm quitting. This is what. So, but that was a good point. Lisa's face. What did you just do? Now, if you were a coach and you did that when some client said, "I'm going to quit my job," how do you think that client might feel?
Like you just dropped a bomb on them?
I can't tell them anymore. Do the backstroke, lighten it up. Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine how much interpretation or that I think that our clients go out there in the world and they're expecting other people to react that way. And especially when, like Jerome said, when we're building rapport, if we go, that could be a quick way to damage some rapport real quick, right? Oh, shoot. Or if you have a people pleaser in there, suddenly they're going to backstroke, like Lisa said, right? They're gonna go, oh, and then they're not going to get what they really want.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quitting my job, by the way.
Oh my God.
Brooke's doing the backstroke right now on live.
No.
So there's leading questions. What we're speaking about sounds like potentially leading gestures. Is that something that, yeah?
Well, we're talking about as a coach, if we want to be neutral, it's one thing to be neutral by not saying or giving advice, but the next level of neutrality is to be aware of our nonverbal communication.
And so I think a lot of the facial expressions and like the emotions that come through, that is something that coaches aren't often deliberate about. It'll just happen, especially when this is easy for me on Zoom to see my facial expressions because I'm looking at a recording of myself. If I was to do coaching in person, I wouldn't get that as much feedback about that. So I might accidentally like make faces at my coach or my clients and not even realize it.
It's funny because one of the suggestions they gave was to see yourself, maybe even set up a mirror. And I just wonder what it would be like as a coach. Like you'd have to put it behind your client, I guess. Mm-hmm. Like, can you imagine like if you, but I mean, the mirror would have to be strategically placed behind your client to ensure you are bringing that neutrality. But I think that like, good point, Anthony. In Zoom, we have a gift. We have a gift of being able to go back and review and see when we weren't being neutral. We can really analyze ourselves. Even if we don't notice in the moment, we can record that, go back through and look deliberately for that reason and go, okay, am I being neutral? If this is, I'm getting really nitpicky with my coaching, I want to be, and this gives you a really tremendous opportunity to review. Lisa, it looks like you want to say something. See,
yeah,
that was nonverbal.
As you're talking, I'm thinking of lots of different things, and I had somebody, I'm thinking about this Zoom and the camera and its placement, and it can look like with the Zoom, if your camera is not exactly on the right areas, it can look like you're not paying attention. It can look like you're looking away. It can look like you're doing something other. And on the receiving end can feel very disconnecting and not open to feel safe.
Like if I was looking down right now, it might just, it's because there's a cat on my lap. It's safety is important though, and that rapport is important, and maintaining it is very important. I think that we can easily get distracted by, especially ADHD periphery, right? So it's to develop that rapport with your client. Being present becomes very, very important, and communicating that you are listening. The other flip side of this too, we've talked a lot about body language, what about, let's not talk about body language. Let's talk about hearing ourselves. And when I say that, hearing more than the words.
What do you mean?
What do I mean?
Totally comes to my mind. I mean, how you're going to come off with your pitch? Are you going to raise your voice like, what? Or are you going to be like, what?
Are you going to
You
be
can kind of
like,
control.
hi, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. Hello. You know, like what energy are you going to bring to that session? Yeah. Are you bringing a calm, cool, and collected energy? Because the truth is that becomes important. Our energy contributes in these sessions, not just our clients.
Is there a recommended? Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I was watching poker players on some of that
I love poker.
feed you gave us the other day. And the poker players, while they're trying to stay really neutral, and I know you're a poker player, try to be really neutral with their behaviors, everything, there's so many micro expressions that happen that can give a full-on story away.
Well, some of them are brilliant because they will deliberately play up they know what their tells are, so they will crank them up. There's one guy that he moves very quickly, like he's a poker player. The pace of his game is fast, and he recently was playing with somebody else who's very slow, and this slow guy deliberately slowed his game down, like made it even slower because he knew it was driving the guy who was a very fast game absolutely nuts, and just like throwing him off because he was refusing to come to his speed. Like he was refusing. This guy's up here, this guy's down here. He's like, no, I'm going further down just to throw you off. What does that mean for a coach? Like, how can we talk? I mean, how would that be relevant for a coach?
That's kind of interesting because we talk a lot about speaking the client language, but is there a benefit if your client wants to go a million miles an hour, you as the coach slow it down and kind of control the pace of the conversation?
I'm going to give you that. It depends. It depends on what that client, I'm having trouble speaking today. It's going to depend on what that client wants to achieve. You know, if they're looking for more peace and serenity, you okay? I might maybe do that depending on what they're wanting out of that session and what they're wanting from the experience.
What's something that's interesting when I do my 30-minute sessions, one of the things I always prep people with is to come in prepared because it's a short amount of time. But we'll get to a lot in that short amount of time. I love it. It works tremendously to my benefit because what happens, and I'll meet the clients there too, depending on where they're at. I try to meet them, but most of the time they come in ready to work. There's not a lot of, they know there isn't a lot of time for them to sort of mill on things. So it sort of forces them to go, okay, this is what I want. I don't have a lot of time. We're not beating around the bush. Let's utilize this time to the best of my benefit. And it's something I really quite enjoy about the 30-minute sessions that I do. Mind you, I've done 1.5 hour, 2-hour sessions with people too, as well, where it's a big exploration. But this is sort of, I guess, another level of communication that's nonverbal. And that's the length of a session too. Could very much play in this nonverbal communication. Well, I'm a coach that does 30-minute sessions. This is what I do. You come in that space, we're setting our framework as a coach, right? And that's not so much about the client, but about how we offer our services, and that's okay, right? I mean, I would say that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you setting your boundaries and then making them verbal moves it towards nonverbal communication. I think in the beginning it is outward. What's the right word? Out loud communication. But then it does, as those boundaries are developed and built, you have established nonverbal communication. That is what our session is at that point. Sorry, I got distracted with Jen.
Yeah, no, Jen, you have a question.
Yeah, so I have a question for everyone. how do you signal to your client that you hear them without validating in agreement with what they're saying?
Well, are we still talking nonverbal here?
Yeah.
Either
Nonverbal.
or. It could be verbal, it could be nonverbal.
So
I
what's
tend to
verbal?
do the nodding, like I'll listen, and
Mhm.
which I don't think is completely like an agreement with everything they're saying or co-signing their BS, but it's just the nodding, and then once they're done, then reflecting back what they say. Okay, so you're feeling this right now. You said you want to achieve X, Y, and Z. I notice you mentioned or you use this word. Can you explain more? So I'm reflecting back what they're saying to at least confirm that I was paying attention and listening to what they were saying. But I will do the nods. Even though maybe I shouldn't do it, but I'll nod either way.
I think
Anthony
we're
stole my
human. It's
answer.
hard not to be human and our
Yeah.
humanness trying to let that person know that we're tracking what they're saying. So I think we will all do it. I mean, I see Jerome right now even nodding his head, or he's avoiding the sun. I'm not sure which.
What about Brooke or Kyle or Jen?
I think so. What's funny is it's something I've tried to get better at not doing, because I know I'm a nodder. I know I'm like, yeah, like I'm one of those. I do that. I'm also I'm a celebrator. I'm like a good jobber, and those are things I need to nix. And they're really sometimes very hard for me to do. But definitely that nod, but I want to be aware of the nodding, because I know I can overdo my nodding. I also make facial expression. I am an animated human being. So
There's another thing you do often that I want to get into a whole nother subject after this. So just remind me I got that, but you do something quite often that I want to talk about.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, now we're all curious.
Yeah,
but
now I'm
okay.
curious. Like, you can't just leave us hanging like that.
No, Kyle, Jen, answer the question. What do you guys do to show that you're paying attention?
I mean, I'm going to kind of be blunt with it and say I might just say I hear you. If it's something as serious that they came out and they wanted to be heard, I just want them to know that I hear you. Brooke gave the example of she saying I'm quitting, and if somebody told me that and they were serious and I gave a little bit for that pause and silence and embraced the silence, and they had nothing else to say, I would say, okay, I hear you. You're quitting. And then continue off of that. So maybe just repeating what they might have said, letting know that they've been heard, and then asking up a follow-up question from there.
Which, with those kinds of words, just like I understand, you have to be kind of careful with those. People have used them really to manipulate situations. As your client gets to know you, they're going to know you're not doing that. But the I understand is a big, really don't want to go there. You don't want to say I understand, because it puts you in their situation, and they're going to come back at you. For some of them, they'll come back at you. You don't understand. You've never been in what I'm doing, da 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 da. So you have to get to know your client in order to use certain word cadence in that, what did we say, 30% of vocabulary, and that body language. Sometimes when they're caught up in their own stuff in the moment, they're not watching your body language. But we all take cues from one another. We all take even blips of cues that we will watch and sometimes misinterpret. So it's helping that client understand what our little facial expressions are, or like for me, when I'm in front of the client, when I'm in person versus on this Zoom call, I move around a lot in my chair because my back hurts. I got a comfortable chair, but it doesn't matter staying in one position for any longer than, so I'm kind of a mover. Ignore that. Let's just keep going, right? So I'll explain my little quirks.
Well, and that's the thing too, that I know that I once was critiqued by somebody. They were like, you take your glasses off, you put them on, and it's like, yeah, I do. I have ADHD. I can't. Do you know how hard it is for me just to stay still? Like, do you know how hard? But yeah, I do. And sometimes having my glasses, I see better with them on. Sometimes they get foggy, and I take them off. And like, so I go through. But it was just so interesting to be critiqued in that way. And it made me definitely more aware. And then it also made me go, okay, it's fine. That's who I am. So I fidget.
And so when you are that kind of when you're self-aware, there's the word, when you're self-aware of what your body's doing, to explain it to your clients so that they're not interpreting it to be something other is helpful too.
Yeah, I think there's a space of preparation there too. You know, don't drink 3 bottles of water right before a session.
Right.
Make sure you're getting your sleep, you know, things like that, because it can be reflected to your client, maybe off-put them.
That's so, Anthony, I'm curious, what was the other thing?
This leads to gestures and gesticulating.
Mhm.
You very often, and we can see more of your body in the frame, so we might get to see more of this, but you talk with your hands a lot. You gesture, you point at yourself, you point at other things. You use your hands to weigh the options or illustrate points that you're making. That is something I tend to do even when I'm on the phone with somebody talking. I'll do this to sort of emphasize points, like I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this, and then you can do this over here. So I talk with my hands, but no one's there to see me talk with my hands. So why do I do that? Do you guys also do that, where you're talking with your hands, but there's no one that you're not visually communicating with anybody? Do you guys tend to do that?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I'll
So
list things off and start counting.
Say that again.
Like I'll list things off. Like I'll have like 3 points that I want to hit, and I'm like 1, 2. Like I'm making sure it doesn't even matter if they're seeing me or not. I'm doing it.
In order to
go ahead, Lisa.
In order to help me see, right now I'm moving my chair, and I don't usually when I'm coaching do this, but in order to not move so much, typically I will sit on my hand so that I'm not so much working the frame in that fashion, just because I can talk with my hands. I think, Brooke, you may do it a little more, but certainly not too far behind that.
Well, those seem to be like involuntary, like gestures, though. Like you just kind of, it goes with what you're saying. There's also gestures that are quite deliberate. Like I would point at yourself. You give the client a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a middle finger.
We'll blur that out later.
Let's not do that.
But there's a lot of things you do non-verbally that could like tell the client a lot without having to say.
I can't wink, but
yeah, winking at your client, I'm not sure that's something we do typically.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know what I mean?
What happens if it's like an involuntary yawn? Like you're just exhausted of a long day and you yawn. Do you think they're just going to be like,
"Oh, I keep
cool, I'm boring"?
If that happened, I would just explain it. I'd be like, this is not about you. I'm just, I'm interested. I'm here. I would probably say something if I did that. I would probably fight it to the nth degree, but then this
is the face I make when I'm hiding a yawn. Just
one of my favorite things to do with people is to be like, wait, hold on. Yeah, I agree. Everything you're saying makes perfect sense. Absolutely. And it's like I love to do these things. I do it often. And I think it's just to instill confusion in people. Or actually, really, it's to say that what I'm saying is not real. What I'm doing with my head is really what I mean.
What would never do that. What would be the benefit then of a coach being more deliberate with, what they're saying with their hands?
So I think that one of the things, we don't have to go away from that. I think that it's about bringing awareness. It's like a properly dropped F-bomb, right? Has so much more impact than when it's placed correctly than if you do it all the time, so a properly placed, like, moment. I think too, it's a tool. For me, it's a visual tool for people.
Mhm.
When I do this, okay, so it's in this hand. How do we feel? You know what I mean?
Right.
That's like to give that visual of where is this landing?
It conveys more of that message and allows them to think. While we're not saying anything, they know it's a balance, right? So it's a metaphor, and they get into that identification of what that comparison is. Yeah.
Could this also be useful when you're trying to use your client's language? Like if your client is somebody who gesticulates a lot and talks like this and waves their hands around, maybe it might be beneficial for the coach to start speaking that way as a common ground.
Maybe. I mean, there's no, a lot of these things we want to have. Here's the rule to do this. Here's the rule to do this. Don't do this. Do this. Don't do this.
Lisa's
And-
doing it right now.
Yeah, and there's no cookie cut. That's why I usually sit on my hands. Because there's no cookie cutter. Each experience is going to be different with each person, as it should be. And sometimes it can be beneficial to utilize, like that weight scale. And other times it doesn't work for that particular person. It was so funny. And I have this memory of this is years ago. I had this particular client that the whole session was in metaphors.
Mm.
The whole session. Now, normally that's not the case. You may drop one here or there, or the client drops one, you pick it up, and so it's just a pure. But with this client, so every client you're going to do different. I'm sitting on my hands again, just so you know. Every client you're going to be doing a little bit similar things, but a lot of the times it's going to work differently for each person you are interacting with, because the goal of the sessions are different, right? What they want to take away is going to be the influencer, and who they are is influencing. Here's another example. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted with the chats. When I'm around somebody that has a accent, and Brooke and I have spoken about this before. She does it too. When we're around somebody who has an accent, I will start picking up that accent. It's just part of really being a good listener, really having a good ear, really trying to reflect what that client is saying. It's among other things. We have good empathy and all that good stuff.
On this note, I've been sitting here with my hand on my face, and I noticed Jerome has joined me, and I feel like I am very much in tune with Jerome right now.
Yes.
So I'm just going to say that I feel like Jerome and I are on the same page.
I think this is a non-verbal gesture to say I'm listening, I'm here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The lean in. Yeah.
Mhm.
I want to quickly address Paul's question. So is the goal to communicate more verbally and little to non-verbal when working with clients? I'd say no. It's to recognize that most of your communication is non-verbal and to be more deliberate with it
Mhm.
instead of just sort of going through the motions of whatever non-verbal cues you're sending. Try to think about more what it is you're doing and how you can use that to benefit your client in the conversation.
Bringing the awareness forward.
Did you do level 1 or level 2? I'll wait for your answer for where I'm going to go with this.
Or neither. Who knows?
No, he said
No, he took it this weekend, he said.
Oh, he did it this weekend.
Yeah, but I don't know if he did level 1 or level 2.
Anthony, to what you just said, sometimes I go like this and I see it on screen and I immediately uncross because I recognize that sends the client a message that I'm closed off.
And that's the next point I wanted to bring up was body language posture. So you could be like this, or you could be like that, sending two different messages. But I think we also, is that in the level 1 where we talk about reading into body posture too much, and it could mean a variety of different things.
Well, we can acknowledge when our client does something. Like, I noticed your energy shift. I noticed you crossed your legs and turned away in this moment. Is there something you want to share about that? But we're not feeding them. We're not saying, oh, you're closed off, you just crossed your arms. Like, that's not what we're doing. We're just simply sharing an observation again, right? I share this observation because it could be that Jen is cold and that's why she's crossing her arms. It may not be that she's closed off. We don't know, and we don't want to assume that we do know. So there's a lot of different. They've really found that it's kind of dangerous for us to presume that we know what people are feeling because of specific body gestures. The truth is, what we begin to know our client, and when we begin to know our client, we can recognize shifts in energy, and maybe that's posture or things like that. Flipping it back to the coach too, when we talk about this, we're talking about body. The other way we communicate is think about how you want to show up to your sessions. One of the things I know, I have showed up to my sessions where I was like running, sledding it on a banana peel, and I get there and I look a mess, and I hate that. I prefer to get to my session and feel like, okay, I put myself together a bit. I got, I don't look like I just ran through the door and I dropped all my groceries on the ground and I'm sitting here for this. I always try to give myself a window of time so that I can like appear together. But I also don't overdress because I want my client to feel comfortable for my session. So like I put a lot of thought into how I present myself, I guess externally and where I'm at and everything as well. All in the effort to make my client feel comfortable, right?
Can you hold pause just for a second? Just for a second, because I want to identify, Jen, you have your arms crossed.
I did, yeah.
Does that mean you're not interested? Does that mean you're not present? What does that mean?
No, I mean, not for me. It actually, I guess I am paying attention. I just kind of eased back a little bit. So I got comfortable. But I guess I am concerned that the client could perceive it as I'm not happy to be here with you. Right. I'm like,
but how interesting is it?
And that's what we have been told in the history of. If you're going to cross your arms, that body language with our arms crossed, and yet there's different ways that we even cross our arms that show that we are definitely interested, that show that we're participating, that we're engaged in the conversation. So
it's not always true though. So what I think the big line that we want to think about here though is if our client crosses their arms, we need to not take that personally. We need to not assume as a coach that it means anything. Because for Jen, it meant the opposite. It meant she was getting comfortable. Well, heck, that's a win in my book. If I'm coaching her, I want her to be comfortable. So I'm not gonna, but if we are inadvertently communicating that we look like, which is what Jen's fear is, and I can understand why she might be more aware of that because she doesn't want her client. Because the reality is our clients don't have the same training as us. That same, like, we assume that they're going about life interacting with others and getting the judgment and so we don't want to appear judgmental through our body language. I also, again, this is just me, and maybe it's because I have an eidetic memory for clothing, which is weird. Like how I dress is important to me and how I show up in a meeting because, again, I feel like it communicates. If you're overdressed and I was a client that was underdressed, I could feel really uncomfortable. Yes. If I was super underdressed as a coach, although I could see coaches that could pull that off too. Like I really could. No, I'm just the t-shirt. I'm the t-shirt and basketball shorts coach. That's how I roll.
The nudist coach.
God.
What?
The nudist coach.
No.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure that's out there in some woo-woo community, okay?
I'm sure.
Probably
There's got to be a nudist coach out there.
Yeah.
And if not, there's your new niche.
There will be one now.
Somebody snatch that niche up.
But what's important though is that we're noticing our clients' body language as well, and they're not just body language; they're everything. Their tone. One of the things we haven't addressed as much is energy. So if our client comes in and they're raring to go and excited about something, do we as a coach, we sort of mentioned, should we meet them at that level of energy and be excited with them, or should we? I mean,
Probably just under their energy.
just under.
Yeah, not above it by no means, right?
What if they come in super
Low
depressed and
energy.
like very low energy? Do you go lower?
Just under that,
I
then.
would wait and see. And there's my hands going again. I would wait and see what the intention of the session is, and if they're wanting to.
If I said I'm quitting, I came in pissed. You don't meet them lower, right?
Well, you don't meet them at pissed, but you might
Yeah.
slow down for them a little if that's what they need.
Quiet down. Yeah.
We don't want to force them to come to our energy, right? What we want to do is make sure they're comfortable expressing themselves in whatever energy that is.
Yeah.
Whereas if we went slow down, no, wait, that's not something we want to do as a coach. We want to quiet and listen and catch all the details, even though they're super excited. And then maybe we say, I noticed that you're speaking really quickly. Is there something that you want to share about that? And maybe that's an opportunity for them to go, I'm super excited, and I'm pumped and I'm ready to like that.
Especially if it's different, right? Especially if it's different from who they've been before.
Mm-hmm.
Can we touch on maybe proxemics now? How close you are to a client, which we can simulate that on Zoom, but that's a simulation. I'm not actually.
Come here. Come closer. No, come here.
It's an interesting point, though, that we're talking partially Zoom and we're talking partially in person, because there's very many differences when we're doing a Zoom coaching versus if we were doing an in-person. And some of these conversations I feel like can sway, just like we're doing right now. You're not going to be this close up on a Zoom call, I would hope, but in person, you might actually scoot your chair up a little closer. You might actually get a little bit more interested or lean forward.
Have you ever been around that person that just talks uncomfortably close?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Don't be that coach. Don't be that coach.
Well, also this goes into how you might even orient your office or room, or if you're coaching with multiple people, especially like if you're coaching a couple, is it you and the other couple on the other side of you next to each other?
Yes.
Or is it more of like a triangle where there's equal distance between all the participants?
It would be so bad if like one of the couple was on a higher seat than the other one. Can you imagine?
Or
Are
you guys all sitting on like a bench and like you're in the middle and the couple's on the left and right of you?
I always thought it was weird too that psychiatrists and things, like, it's on a couch. Like, why are we on a couch? Because this feels a little like, it doesn't feel perfect. The moment I'm like laying down and kicking my feet up, I feel uncomfortable. I feel like something bad is gonna happen, and I should have my guard up.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, I do. I feel vulnerable. If somebody went into like a coach's office and they were like, lay down on the couch, I'd be like, no.
Sorry, I'm in the wrong spot.
When I go to the dentist and like lay back in the chair, like my hands are like this, my legs are crossed. I'm comfortable otherwise, but this is like showing that's like I don't exactly feel like wanting to be open and vulnerable to
especially the dentist. Sorry, Dennis.
Yeah, sorry to all our dentist coaches out there.
But that's an amazing point, is thinking about how your office is set up could make a client very uncomfortable. If you came in and they were on like a rolly stool, it might make for a very awkward.
Talk about temporary. Get out of your desk. Wow.
Or like I can imagine like your desk is like very big, imposing. You've got the high-backed, super expensive chair, and then you've got like a wooden chair for like.
They've got a super low bench without a back.
So like that.
Get comfortable.
Without even like, I don't even know if that's like. I guess it is nonverbal communication, but it's communication that's not even expressed by the individual parties. It's just present in the room that you're in by virtue of how the room is set up.
Yeah. So in my office, I did the triangle thing that you were saying, Anthony, except the couple sat on the other side and they were closer. So it was a very narrow triangle because it wasn't that big office. And then I sat what is that other point called? I don't remember now. Is it perpendicular? Anyway, and I sat a little further away. So they're really close. I'm a little bit further away.
You're like
And
a little isosceles triangle.
there you go. So there were times though, because I don't have the office anymore because it's all virtual these days, right? So I had an ottoman that I would ask permission. Is it okay if I come closer? And I would sit on the ottoman. The ottoman tended to be lower than where they were. So I had all kinds of little strategies to help the client feel comfortable, help the client feel without saying, I want you to feel comfortable, doing different positions. Like I was asking Paul what level he was in, because if he had taken level 2 this weekend, that's something that we kind of go into in our level 2 class about the different positions and how they can benefit and intimidate. So it's to be aware of where you are, what you're doing, and how you're engaging.
Can you guys show me your most intimidating positions right now?
What about though? What about if I like chose this as a virtual background? Like,
a bedroom?
It's a bedroom, right? Like that would be kind of a weird thing to do. I mean, I think that's when we're talking, it goes even extends to Zoom and things like that. With what are we showing behind us? How are we setting ourselves up in this space? Are we in a kitchen and there's people running around back and forth? But that awareness of this is another layer of nonverbal communication, is I'm in a place that is also taking this conversation seriously and is safe too for you.
Scarlett,
Kyle's coaching me. He's my new favorite coach. I want to coach with kitten and puppy pictures behind them, like just playing at all times. I would be very distracted by cuteness.
The new baby makes all of these incredible little noises. I just love those little sweet noises. They're just heart-wrenching and put a smile on your face. Yeah. I don't get to have her now. So sad.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. What are our thoughts on nonverbal communication?
I just want to show my most intimidating position.
What's on your shirt? I tried to see what was on your shirt.
Picasso shirt.
Anthony's background.
Anthony's background. Is that your most intimidating?
That's the most intimidating background.
Here's this. Mine is this.
Oh, there you go. That works.
Reflecting on my clients.
Final thoughts, guys?
Yeah.
I definitely think it's something where you need to consider where you are. Are you virtual or are you in person? Can you see yourself or can you not see yourself? And matching I liked how someone said, if you come in up here, you got to come in just a little bit lower. And if they come in a little bit low, sometimes you just got to be neutral. But trying to just recognize what your body output can produce to your client.
Yeah. And watch their body language with how they are receiving. Also allows you to pay attention to what you're doing as well.
My final thought is to try to figure out and discover what your own body language says about how you communicate. As well, keep an eye out for the weird or inconsistent or incongruent behaviors that your client might be exhibiting. They could be saying that they're happy, but their body language and their tone of voice might say otherwise. That might be a place to question as a coach and maybe dive deeper into. So just be aware of yours and other people's body languages going forward.
Can I add one more?
No.
Notice the shifts. I think you notice how I ignored you.
Yes.
Subtle body language there going on. Notice the shifts in your client, and that's what you're, I noticed the shift. You had your foot still, and now it's wiggling.
Yeah.
In order,
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Off.
Yes. I'm noticing the shifts. I think is very. I mean, it's critical. That's.
Mhm.
I think it's as important, if not more important, than noticing the word changes, than noticing, where that's really what being curious is when we're really paying attention to those subtle things, because a lot of times we express subtly, and if we are intuitive and capable of noticing that, it can be a very powerful tool in our toolbox. In order to remain neutral, though, I'm going to coach like this.
I really think that's scary. I don't know if that's neutral.
I'll also get a voice changer, and it's going to be like one of those like.
Oh man, I forgot voice mod.
Yeah, I'm going to voice mod myself so you cannot tell that if there's any.
That brings to light something that I think we didn't mention at all during this live stream, is literally being nonverbal and holding space and not speaking. That's one of the more important things I think you can do as a coach.
And it's not just being nonverbal, it's being interested in what the client's saying, but holding that space, like Jerome is saying, because that client is really contemplative in that moment. I did it the other day. I was on the phone with someone, and I'm like silent for a really long time, and I went, oh, and I'm going to cover your ears if you don't like swear words. Oh shit, did I lose that? And just as I was going to start saying something, then they filled in the blank, and I went, oh, okay. So it is uncomfortable because you're, if you're virtual or you're on the phone, you lose things in checking in, but hold that space like a few seconds longer before you check in, because at some point, if they're still there, they're going to make a noise of some sort.
Just imagine like a loading circle above their head, and just give them the time for it to load.
Yeah, one of the things in the ICF articles that we read was that they suggested learning how to nod in your mind. Like not actually nodding, but doing it in your mind. Yeah, I feel like everyone's trying to do it right now.
I am. I feel like my eyes are nodding now. Like my eye, or I'm repeating. I'm nodding. I
have these muscles back here that were like.
I feel like I smile when I nod with my mind. Like I do. I feel like I smile when I nod with my mind.
Something that I notice I do to acknowledge that I'm hearing the client is I close my eyes. I go, and it's like a little nod, or I'll take a deep breath. I don't know why. For some reason, I use that to signal. But Brooke, I wanted to touch on something you said real quick earlier. You talked about showing up to the call like, a hot mess, like disheveled, like, that what message does that send to your client, and how you want to show up looking put together and professional and grounded. And I think that that's really important, but I also think that it's important for each coach to show up authentic to who they are and know that they are the right coach for certain clients, just as they are.
Even if you're disheveled, gross.
Yeah, there's somebody out there that is rocking like the tank top and basketball short coach. Like that dude is out. He's out there and he's killing it somewhere. So
one thing I like to do that was done to me, and I carry it forward, is I invite the client to come as they are. I specifically say in the first time I talk to them, I invite you to come to this call. If you're a hot mess, I don't care. Just come and show up. Come as you are. Don't worry about how you present. Don't worry about your appearance. Just come and be yourself.
On the other hand,
this space is safe for that.
Yeah, I'm like, you better put your best on. but in his office.
I will be in a shirt and tie, but you.
Right. Yeah.
I totally get it. Of course. I in a million years would I judge a client for how they showed what they were wearing as they walked through my office door.
But they don't always know that.
Yeah,
They don't
yeah.
always
Mhm,
know that.
mhm. I
The
like
people
that.
pleasers especially, they think they need to put themselves together for us, and they don't.
All right.
Lisa's modeling one of the CLCI shirts again that we don't have.
Taking long enough to say something. It's true. It hasn't happened yet. We're working
Is
on
that
it.
like a silk shirt?
No, it's fake silk.
Like it looks shiny.
It's I think it's satin. Isn't satin is the other shiny?
Satin's nice,
Mm.
yeah.
I want to get a CLCI kimono.
I feel
I'd
like
like
Jen
a
should sign us
CLCI
up.
ball cap.
Oh.
Nice.
That would be great.
I would wear it. I would wear a CLCI ball cap. I would have one I walk.
Absolutely, I would too.
Yeah.
What
Me too.
color?
Black.
Gold.
Always black for me. Just this
Gold.
default black or pink.
I like black.
Hot pink.
All right. We've devolved. Time to
We're talking about this in meeting next week.
All right, guys. Thank you. Join us if you haven't. Join us on our 3-day intensive class. They're fun. They're informative. There's a lot of information. If you've joined us on 1, find out and join us on level 2. It's that much more and then some. 3-day intensives. Level 1, level 2. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. We should be back on Tuesday at 4 Pacific.
And I want to tell Paul and David that we appreciate you. And we appreciate you being here. You said you appreciate this, but we appreciate you and your participation. And it means a lot to us that you took the time to be here, watch this, and join us and join in the conversation. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate you.
I think David took our class, if I remember, like 2015 or something. If you're still there, put it in there. But I think he's been a little coach for a little while.
Right.
Bye, guys.
See you guys later.
Bye.